Street law.
You got to take a look at our street law program. Anytime you can expose young people to real practical examples, mock trials, have real mentors come in that are law students.
To try and get the high school students very excited about law.
Take our young people over to the law school, let them get a first-hand approach. These kids are doing well. These kids are smarter than we are. They can inform us more about the law and the legal system than we know, even as adults. So anytime you make learning relevant, kids are going to do well and they're going to soar.
It's a new season coming to me. Lift your voices and say it. It's a new season. It's a new day. It's a new day. Fresh anointing.
Oak Park, California, an urban community home to Sacramento High School, a school which once faced the same educational crisis as thousands of schools across America, but has now been turned around thanks to the influence of NBA superstar Kevin Johnson and a newly implemented McGeorge School of Law program called
Street law.
Sacramento High, or Sac High to its students, is an institution rich in history. Established in 1856, Sac High is the second oldest high school west of the Mississippi River and is considered to be an historic landmark. During its long past, Sac High's alumni have made extraordinary contributions to American history. From sports, to politics, Pulitzer Prize winners, to educators, even to space and internet technology. However, over time, Sacramento High fell victim to a downward trend that threatened to close its doors forever. After years of low student achievement, high dropout rates, and lack of graduates moving on to four-year colleges and universities, the Sacramento School District shut the doors of Sacramento High in 2003. Even though Sacramento High had reached its darkest hour, a concerned American and Sac High graduate took bold steps to turn things around. Kevin Johnson, a three-time NBA All-Star, had been using his off-season time to help make a difference for kids back home in Sacramento. In 1989, Kevin opened St. Hope Academy, an after-school program designed to keep high-risk kids off the streets and into a learning environment. Through St. Hope Academy, Kevin turned Sacramento High into a charter school with a new plan for high achievement and service to the community. Rick Maya, the executive director for St. Hope, talks about Sacramento High's past, its transition to a charter school, and how St. Hope's unique approach, such as a partnership with the McGeorge School of Law, has helped the charter reach not only its goals for the students at Sacramento High, but for schools nationwide.
St. Hope has a very unique model in which we combined not only academic success in the classroom through our charter schools, but also community revitalization, as well as bringing arts and culture back to the inner city. And finally, looking at how, as from a civic leadership perspective, can we invest in young adults to go out and not only be community-minded through volunteerism, but really building a culture of giving back to the community. And after being a supporter of St. Hope for 5 or 6 years, I had an opportunity to actually join the organization as its executive director, because from a business standpoint, the model that's been built here in Sacramento, there's now an opportunity to duplicate that in other cities across America. So bringing our school strategy to New York, DC, and Chicago, but also our Economic Development Corporation, our arts in the inner city programs, as well as bringing the civic leadership in a program that we call Hood Corps to different cities across the country. That was the compelling opportunity to join St. Hope as we focus not only on Sacramento, but also national expansion. Now, Sacramento High School, many people don't know, is actually the second oldest high school west of the Mississippi. Last year, Sac High celebrated its 150-year anniversary. And for many, many years, Sacramento High School was the destination for high school students. So there's a lot of affinity back to the high school here. Now, over the course of the last 150 years, and more specifically the last 40 years, there has been a downward trajectory on performance out of Sac High. A lot of folks have left the area. It had turned into a school that was failing miserably from all accounts, both academic, attendance-wise, and overall performance-wise. And so 5 or 6 years ago, it was in the midst of being closed and actually turned over to the state of California. At that time, the superintendent, Jim Sweeney, came to St. Hope and to Kevin Johnson and said, we've got a high school here that has historical value to the community. It was Kevin's alma mater. Kevin's mom went to Sac High. Kevin's grandparents went to Sac High. And he had asked that St. Hope look at taking over Sacramento High School, which today is now one of the only transformation high schools in the country. What you'll see are many charter schools actually go in and start a high school, and they'll start with one class of 9th graders of 50 students, and then eventually build over time. But what makes Sac High so unique is literally overnight, in the course of about 3 months of planning, St. Hope Public Schools took over Sac High, inherited the 1,600 students, but also inherited a lot of the problems that existed within the school. And over the course of 5 years, bringing in a new culture, a new model, higher academic standards, and we raised the bar on overall performance and expectations. What we've now seen is a high school that's a top performer. From truancy to low attendance to students not being productive in class, both socially and academically, to turnover in teachers. It was literally a school that everyone just forgot about, and it just became irrelevant. And it was always coded for several years as the school that you don't want to go to because there were gang fights and there were just issues from just kids getting along with each other. We've heard stories that there were classrooms without teachers. And there were students that literally would sit in class, in the gymnasium for an hour without a teacher. What was there was this, affinity to the school, and we saw and believed day one when we looked our students in the eye that they wanted more, and the parents wanted more. When Sacramento High School was under consideration of being taken over by St. Hope, Kevin demanded that there be a community need, and that the community really rally around the demand of the high school, because it just wasn't, we were not going to go in and take over a high school where there was going to be no community support. And so what you see today is a partnership between students, parents, and teachers and administrators. Our students know that it's a privilege to go to Sac High. Our teachers know that it's a privilege and a responsibility to deliver the highest level of education possible. So in order to get there, what we've done is we've looked at an extended model. Our students start school at 7:30 and they're not done till 4:30, which is radical compared to most other public high schools around the country. And what we have found is that the more time we spend with students, the more emphasis we have on college-going environment. We have uniforms, we have built-in advisory classes, we have partnerships with McGeorge as an example. These are all of the elements that we've added to a traditional curriculum that you'd find in just everyday Main Street high school America that we know is really that differentiator when you look at getting those long-term results. And our goal is not to just graduate students at a high level, but it's to have our students prepared and actually accepted into four-year universities.
Over this summer, like the first week of summer break, me and 9 other students went to New York, visited like all the colleges out there, like Columbia University. We went to West Point, a little military school. And during that school year, my older brother, he went to New Orleans, and they visited colleges out there.
And we've made a tremendous amount of progress. I believe when we first took over the high school, 25% of the kids were going on and accepted into four-year universities. Last year, the class of 2007, 73% of the kids were actually accepted into a four-year university. This year, looking at 2008, we're going to break through 80%. And when we look at the caliber of schools that our students are being selected to go to, it's the Stanfords, the MITs, the Dukes, the Harvards. So not only have we broken through the element of getting accepted to a four-year university, our students are now faced with the decision of their life, which four-year, distinguished university are you going to go to? So what we've proven over the course of 5 years is that you have to raise the bar on students. You have to be able to provide the support mechanisms from the parents, the students, and the teachers and the administrators. but you also have to build into the curriculum those differentiators again that at the end of the day give more time to students in the classroom through personalization, through extended day, through just the college-going environment that's just built into the culture of our school. Those are all factors to why we're seeing such tremendous results that not only can be sustained, but we also know that we can duplicate these results in different schools across the country. Most important, I think this is the foundation of the success of SAC High, are the partnerships that we have with outside organizations like Pacific McGeorge School of Law. That's the differentiator that you don't see in a traditional school. Specifically with McGeorge School of Law, we're preparing students through our 4 small school model, law and public service being one of those 4 small schools. Our students are getting a taste of what law school and college is like at the freshman level.
Street Law is an established course at many U.S. law schools, where law students deepen their understanding of sophisticated U.S. law concepts, hone practical lawyering and leadership skills, and provide community development by teaching law and mentoring to high school students. Street Law at the Pacific McGeorge School of Law goes beyond traditional street law programs by preparing students to practice law in a 21st century global context. This is accomplished by adding international law subjects and comparisons, and by incorporating McGeorge's commitment to technology in the courtroom. High school students follow a 1-semester course learning advanced law concepts, courtroom procedures, as well as legal technology skills, which culminate to a mock trial where these skills are demonstrated in a realistic courtroom environment. Professor Fred Galvis, Harvard graduate and administrator of the Street Law program at McGeorge, lectures internationally on the use of technology in the practice of law, including the use of 3D animations and virtual reality. Professor Galvis was the first in the country to use hyperlinked media in a law review article and teaches courses in civil procedure, evidence, and computer-assisted litigation. When introducing his law students to the Street Law program, Professor Galvis encourages them to become skilled teachers, as this is key to not only leading their young predecessors to success, but empowers the law students' own cultivation of skills needed to become tomorrow's leaders.
When I'm writing or thinking of issues, I think it really helps my teaching because I can incorporate a lot of the research that I've done, things that I've found, old assumptions that I had that once I get into the research and realize I may be slightly off or there may be other perspectives, I try to bring that into teaching. Lawyers speak for a living, they argue for a living, and they try to persuade and solve problems. Judges will ask you questions. Co-counsel will ask you questions. Your client will have certain concerns. And it's very important to be able to engage, to react, to think quickly, to take into account all the things you need to take into account in a very professional, ethical, and civil way. I'm Professor Fred Galvis, and I've been teaching here at Pacific McGeorge for the last 15 years. And one class I teach is Street Law International. This will be the 3rd year that I'm teaching it. Street Law is actually a program that started in the 1970s, early 70s in Georgetown Law School. And the idea there was that professors started thinking that their law students should take things called clinical programs, where instead of just listening in class and engaging in the Socratic method, they would actually go out and practice like lawyers. Well, one thing they said is, hey, one of the best ways to learn the law is to actually teach the law. And a very community responsible way of doing this would be, why not have law students teach law to high school students?
This has been the most exciting part of my experience teaching at SAC High, was to see the student who gets it, to see the student who gets excited, about the course, about the material. So I posed a question to the class. How can you telltale automatically prove to a jury that someone has breached the standard of care without going through this intricate, complex BPL analysis? Most of the class just blank. Staring there, nothing. I repeated the question again. Blank. Third time I repeated the question, someone raised his hand and said, "You show that they broke the law." And that was it. That's exactly what I was looking for, and that was great.
One young woman in particular, in the street law program, I worked with her on cross-examination, on the form of her cross-examination, on picking the areas to be persuasive, on being confident, on having eye contact with the witness, on not letting the witness control her, because it's her job as the cross-examiner to control the witness. She got going and she was on fire. She was just, it was so great to see. And then I watched one of our law students work with her, with me, to sort of cultivate this innate talent. And it was incredibly exciting.
On Emmett 25th, is that correct, downtown?
Sure, if I said it, then it's true. I mean, I didn't make it up. I just don't remember.
Thank you. I just wanted to refresh you. That's all.
So these high school kids, if they're nurtured, are going to be as good as our best law students. There's no question in my mind.
Time pulling one of the kids aside during class, a kid who's, I believe, the smartest, best student in the class, and he's one of those guys that can sit and listen to you while he talks to somebody else. He hears what's going on. Unfortunately, they don't. And to pull him aside and say, "Look, here's the deal. You need to be a leader for your class because they're following you and they're listening to you and I need you to work with me here," and just kind of show him that he was really important within that group dynamic, and have him understand that. And then 5 minutes later, when people start talking, hear him say, "You guys, we need to listen to this," and have the whole class quiet down.
A eureka moment.
Yeah.
What do you think are the main skills you've learned in this class, and how will that be transferable to you when you're as a future attorney?
One of the main skills, I think, is connecting with the students, and I think that's transferable into litigation practice when I'm in front of a jury and having to connect with the jury members. And seeing as these kids are 16 to 18 years old, I think that's probably going to be one of the toughest crowds to connect with, and teaching and explaining topics to their level and making a legal concept very basic and something that they can understand and then take on their own accord and discuss and apply in their own life.
And I'm a third-year law student at McGeorge, and I was born in Minnesota, came to California when I was 13. My father's Colombian. I met him for the first time when I was 20 years old.
Why did you go to law school to begin with, and were there any obstacles you had to overcome in your background before you made it to this point in your life where you are about to graduate from law school?
My greatest obstacle would probably be my own lack of belief in myself. Coming from the environment that I came from, there wasn't a lot of expectation to go on, to succeed. And sometimes people ask me, when I became an Olympic athlete, if I had been dreaming about that ever since I was a kid. And I'll say no, I wasn't dreaming about that since I was a kid, because when I was a kid I never thought it was even possible. And when it happened, it was a result of just not stopping, just continuing going at trying to reach that goal.